What's the plan here? Why are you hitting this one? I've never seen this. No, fuck. Dude, no fucking way. No fucking way. He actually played none of the game. That's actually crazy. Using the in-game physics too, not through walls or anything. That's crazy. So he like gets the momentum from this, and then what? I guess soft bounces, so it's, I don't even know how this works. And it gets him all the way to the next pad. And he found an angle where he can keep his momentum all... That's so crazy, dude. That's so crazy. Well played. That's awesome. That's awesome. That is awesome. What a wild run. Very, very impressive. I did not expect the game to still have innovative new runs. I figured Krim would just hold it. That's pretty fucking cool. All right, let's watch the rest of this, the new game. I'm going to put a challenge down. No one's going to get... What's that time at? What time was that? That was 7:49. I'm putting a challenge down. No one gets under 7 minutes. And I'm putting $400 on it. $400 cash, straight on PayPal. I'll just send you $400. I'll make it 500. Easy number. $500. 500 flat. 500 flat. If someone gets 7 minutes, breaks the minute barrier. 700 for the sub 7. I just know speedrunners are gonna break it, dude. $700. Okay. All right, $700. $700 for the sub 7. God is my witness. 600 for the sub 6, though. As times get better, the price gets slower. All right, let's see this. Let's see this.
That I'd be very remiss not to.
Oh yeah, no bullshit. Like you can't break the walls. This be the same rules as the competition. You can't glitch through a wall or like jump on a pad and it goes to the moon. It has to be within the physics of the game, same rules as the competition.
Show you. Starting in the warehouse. Oh, top grab, very clean, very nice. Where's he going now? This is new. This is new.
Well, I just watched this.
That's new.
I just watched this. React harder.
Wow. And then in middle management, Brandwagon goes crazy.
Hey, Brandwagon's in the chat. Brandwagon, fire run. Fire run. I had some notes. Couple things I would have done a little different, but like generally an incredible run. Incredible, powerful. I beat it yesterday. You beat that time yesterday? Well, I'm going to tell you, Brandwagon, if for whatever reason someone can break 7 minutes, there's a $700 cash prize. $700 cash prize if you can get 659 or better. I don't think anyone could do it. It seems impossible, but if you could do it.
Easy. Grabs the top grab. Oh. This is new. Where is he going? Whoa. And further up in middle management, they of course use the slingshot, but in a way I would have never expected.
I already saw this, Isto.
Where is he going? Under.
That's such a crazy skip. That's such a crazy skip.
And that is all of middle management done. And of course, the biggest, most impressive skip is in the VP section, where they've completely refined the original edge skip with what is now called the quintuple edge skip, or quint skip for short. What is he doing? Where is he going? What is he doing?
I love this skip.
And
I
he
love
bounces
this skip.
off and weaves
Dude.
through.
That's such a disgusting skip, because you just skipped the entire hard part of the game. You didn't do any of the hard part. All of that whole room that I personally coded by hand.
He skipped everything, even more than before. That was insane. Huh? Wow. And he
D'Artagnan says that's how I did it on my first playthrough. Really, D'Artagnan? That was how you beat it on your first playthrough. You just sort of saw the line. You just like looked in the room like, hey, I wonder if I could do this. And then that's incredible. That is an incredible insight. You're such an incredibly talented gamer. I guess I must have missed it. I guess I'm not as sharp as you.
shaved off nearly 3 minutes from Karem's original
yeah,
time.
that was the intended route.
That's
wow.
Wild.
I'm going to
Well
tell you something.
done. Anyway.
It's going to sound foolish. That's not the intended route. I know. I guess we made it too obvious, but like, this is going to sound crazy to you. That's actually an extremely advanced skip.
Back to the video. Mid-February, Dom and I were brainstorming new ideas.
You grab on this piece, and
Okay.
this one would rotate like this around, like using the underside of the slingshot.
Because if you miss it, you fall. Curve ramp.
Dude, I'm going to tell you about Dom. This guy right here.
Like using
He, the second he finished Get to Work, because he was one of the programmers, he's like, all right, well, I'm done with gaming forever. Not because of this, but he's like, I'm going to go repair motorcycles for a living. And he just like dips, goes to repair motorcycles and travel on them. And then like, I don't know, 6 months later, he's like, hey, I want to make more levels. I think that's awesome. I think he's just like...
you grab on this piece, and
Okay.
this one would
By the way, this is all a joke. I'm joking, because I was the sole programmer. I did all of the coding myself. We just staged these with actors to make it seem like there was a bigger team, because I didn't want to... It was just like a funny goof that I'm doing.
rotate like this around, like using the underside of the slingshot.
Because if you miss it, you fall. Curve ramps that we had, and you're like really hitting them sideways and like really sort of like swooping.
I wonder if we could just make the level instantly flip upside down,
That would be
so
insane.
that the camera would stay.
I played the test of this level and never beat it. And if I play it in the real game, I'm just going to quit. I'm going to have them install a dev patch. I can't beat this stupid fucking level. It's too hard.
Like in the same position, and the level was just like floop.
This idea was wicked. So we tried a bunch of variations and unfortunately just couldn't get it to work. Testers found it to be really nauseating, and there was unfortunately a lot of
Testers. Bro, I think it was just my ass complaining. I just complained the fucking roof off on this one. I didn't know he was cutting it out of the game, though. Tragedy.
waiting. But the only way to find the really good ideas is to fail a bunch. And we thought crumbling physics-based platforms would work, but they were super inconsistent. Sometimes you would just crash, which is no fun. Even these crazy loop-de-loops that has you riding both sides of the slingshot, we thought would totally work, but wasn't that fun to ride and ended up being scrapped. But I just wanted to show them off because a big part of game design is experimenting and failing. But if you do it enough, you end up with some pretty cool ideas that you'll see later in the video.
Oh.
Now, because this update is 100% free, I needed to find sneaky ways to save money, since the update is free. And Walter and I decided
Free,
that we
baby!
could create a convincing new main character by, well, just reskinning the old one. Maybe go orange. We gotta change the straps to brown. Brighter brown leather. Oh, that's nice. Walter, that looks really good. Oh, that's clean. Yeah, it's like an old school, like, leather ball. Let's do the shoes. Oh, that was easy. That was fast. So what about hair? Is that easy? Now that's so funny. Can we do a mustache? Wow, he already looks completely different.
Cop and or firefighter.
Yeah.
It's honestly kind of funnier this
It's
way.
clearly
So you want
not
it to be,
me.
like more tanned.
It's clearly not me. Just look at the two things on the screen. I don't have a mustache and I have hair. I'm not showing it right now because I have this great EBITDA hat. It's not uncanny. It looks nothing like me.
Yeah, just more tanned. Not by a ton, but just a little bit.
Looks good.
Wow. Wow. Now, we made some changes to the hair. Richard Bankman is a young, ambitious banker, not a dirty cop. But you can see from the glamour shots that I've recorded, he looks fantastic and cost me almost no money. Since, you know, the update is free.
Free!
So there are 449 lines of dialogue for the main game. And for the DLC, we might have gone a little overboard because now there's 1,000 lines. Oops.
Yikes.
We should probably start recording now.
Hello.
Do you want to fake an intro?
Oh yeah, we can fake an intro.
Should I come in and say something really racist? Like, how does this work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm Steven. I'm the lead developer and founder of Isto Inc. Thank you so much for doing this.
No problem. I'm excited.
Have you done VO before?
No.
Not in the slightest.
Okay,
Wait, will you give me pointers and stuff?
absolutely. 100%.
Okay.
Warm up your chops. Do some vocal exercises. Gurgle some water.
So raise your ya.
And you're playing Cassius Feynman. You're Ted's uncle and CEO, Mr. Daryl Matthews Rothschild Mayhew III, Agent Dunsmith.
I'm gonna channel my inner spy store salesman.
He's a psychopath, a stalker,
Okay.
just absurdly passive aggressive. So
It was a perfect character. Am I going to say this as a joke exactly? Am I actually going to make this joke from the time I was in the call? Because I was just about to say that's the perfect character for Squeaky. But if I say it in real life, I'm going to feel stupid.
Easy for you. Sort of.
Free lift. Okay, but that's just my brain. It's just firing, dude. Like Squeaks is laughing.
Fit right.
Okay. I feel like this was written for me.
Yeah. I just should make sure to make it really whiny. Really whiny.
can you do an American accent?
Yeah, it'll feel more personal.
Yeah, it'll feel more personal.
Yeah, it'll feel more personal.
I like your voice.
All right, so not British. I've got to go American. Sorry.
Is that American?
It'll feel more personal.
Oh really? So he's doing like an American accent?
Oh yeah, and it's
Oh, that's
good.
so exciting.
I mean, I guess it would be like a Spider-Man voice, the reporter guy.
What in the name of Parker is this? Miles Morales? Yeah, it'll feel more personal.
Do you do a lot of American accents for voices?
Yeah. Like,
But here at this company, we are a family, and every family has a favorite nephew.
you just have to pronounce the R's so much and hit every letter more than I would.
I want to hear round one of Cassius Feynman.
Hey, this message is for Mr. Richard Bankman. Feel free to swing by my office. Talk soon.
Guy doesn't need any help. He's got it.
That was great, right? That was perfect.
Good.
Wow.
Cash just came alive.
Can you deafen real quick?
Yep.
That was trash, right? That was.
Terrible.
We've made a mistake.
Wait, dude, I'm so much funnier offline. Why did I should just not go live. I should just record myself alone. I'm gonna drop. All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
A big part of his identity is his name. Yeah, I've tried to insert him saying his full name as much as
many
possible.
times as possible. Okay. Mr. Daryl Matthews Rothschild Mayhew III.
Oh, you got it.
All right.
He is very stern and very serious.
Bankman, this is your boss.
You would read Bankman like, Bankman,
Bankman, this is your boss.
this is your boss.
All right, a little more grumpy. Got it. Bankman, this is your boss, Mr. Daryl Matthews Rothschild Mayhew III.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, that's good.
I have a reputation to uphold, as well as any of my employees who represent me, Mr. Daryl Matthews Rothschild Mayhew III. It's called love. I'm a warm, huggy bear. Don't let me down.
Nice.
He's good.
That's
I mean,
good.
To my
I could easily picture Smollett as the boss I hate. As the manager who's like,
fellow employee, this is your CEO.
Okay.
And you also said opportunity, which is incredibly
Oh.
British.
Tunity.
opportunity. Because now you have the opportunity to take it on. Oh, you silly Americans and your use of the language.
We're a black market SB.
Oh, I'm sorry. We don't say aluminium. Yeah. And we also win Revolutionary Wars instead of lose them. I don't know. I guess it's our fault. Our bad.
In our store after all. But I just want to confirm that you meant to order, let's see here, 3,187. My alarm is ringing! Why? We'll do a lot. Fuck it. We're running with it. We're a black market espionage store after all. We're a black market espionage store after all.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
What is happening here?
Oh, but for me, I find it a lot easier to hold lower voices and more gravelly voices when I'm doing that. I can go like a, yeah. I can get like a little lower. I can add a little more gravel to it. Every single person ever in any kind of voice thing would tell you, do not do that. I'm like reverberating a part of my vocal.
Yes.
Yeah, do not do that.
Thanks again for your business. And as always, have a good day. All right. Tell me if that was good, let me know. Love you.
Now the cat starts to come.
Thanks, Wubby.
Hey, buddy. Pal.
Does it work?
Hey guys. Atrioc here. Swear to me. Swear to me. Is the drug. Where's Rachel?
Where's Rachel?
Where's Rachel?
It does actually kind of work if you put your 2 fingers on there.
Where's Rachel?
I'll stick to Toad voice and Jar Jar Binks, thank you.
Ooh, yahoo! So, rawr.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, great.
Flying through this.
Squeaks is
swing
great.
Yeah, I'll just wing it. During our inquiry into the Jed Music Festival scam, one of our accountants flagged the Doinkler portfolio.
Yeah, that was good.
Yay!
TED Music Festival. The good news is... Fucking Jed Music Festival. The good news is... Sorry, the thought of just saying Jed Music Festival is so fucking funny. Sorry.
I like seeing you discover the lines as you read them.
yeah, it's fun. Try not to break character. All right.
We're on to the last one.
Poor Richard. Hey, buddy. Richard, how's it going? Great job on shooting Bronzeman sack.
Okay. I actually think Squeaks would be the worst boss of all time. I think Squeaks would be so fucking Office Space coded. He's like passive aggressive, but your manager, so you can't.
You said shooting Bronzeman sacks instead of shorting.
Right. That's a big thing wrong.
Bankman! Mr. Daryl Matthews Rothschild Mayhew III. Are you responsible for all these security guards walking around the office?
It's insane. Sea-Dog, he never reads the lines.
All right. Now give it a real good beep this time, Susie. We're gonna need it.
Beep.
Whoa, a lot of calls from your CEO lately. Crazy, right?
He'll like get to the psychotic parts and he'll be like mid-read and then he'll crack.
Dent in the vending machine. Now you know why.
I'm trying not to laugh. I got some weird shit in there.
Oh, you can cut around
Not
it.
expecting it.
Because of this, the board has decided to reposition Ted within the company to Senior Director of Marketing.
Marketing!
So fucking dumb. Okay, sorry.
Sea-Dog's a professional.
He's a pro.
He's really, truly the GOAT.
Busy schedule to call you individually.
Why can't Steve Dog just be British with the company racist? Yes. That in lore reason, you could never have a British CEO. It's because they're not good at their job.
Individually.
It's more with the J.
Well, it's countryist, really.
Individually.
Nationalist.
Individually. All right. Individually.
I'll get it.
Why not hire an American to play an American? Kind of unwoke of you. Fuck. Oh, fuck. You're going to hate who we got to play Xi Jinping then. I was really excited to announce Scarlett Johansson, but now it feels a little... It feels... it feels off.
Look, I'm just a professional. This should be no problem for me. Okay, let me run it back. All right.
Busy schedule to call you individually. Individually. All right, great chat. Bye.
Paid off? What are you talking about? Since when do we pay off juries?
Just a Tuesday where we bribe a jury.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it. Well, too late now. Just make sure no one finds out, right? Wait, are you still on the phone?
Help! What is going on?
Wait, I'm sorry. Did Scootish record his lines live?
How do I stop? Help!
Like on
You should
stream?
step, really far back and then try and project.
Wait, what? Oh my god, no!
Holy, the
freak out.
passion. Fan, the
I think
passion.
you crushed it. You did really good.
Thank
That was
you.
awesome. That was great.
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
The joke about your mom's famous borscht had me dying laughing. And I'm sure I'll see you later. Bye.
That was great.
Yes.
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 Yes. I
Squeaks
gotta
is
do the
great.
finger
Squeaks
motion.
is great.
Did a measly divorce stop me from moving on with my life? Yes. Yes. Also yes.
And scene.
Small was great too. That was great.
Good job. That was awesome.
Okay. Cool.
57 minutes. Nice.
Not bad. Not bad. Not bad.
All right, man. Later.
Peace.
May.
Here it is, the Doinkler portfolio. I added the voicemail pickups that contain all of the VO that we just recorded, and I wanted to show off the coolest feature, the restart button. For the main game, we really had to tone down the difficulty of the jumps because of how brutal the falls were. But with the restart button, you can instantly retry and learn how to properly hit the obstacles without having to climb all the way back up.
How about that?
Which means we were able to bump up the difficulty by like 300%. Some of the levels are hard, but I've done my best to put the really hard levels at the end of each world. So the difficulty curve kind of looks like this. Ignore that last part. That's
This is gonna be hard for me.
And since you can play the first level of each world, if you get stuck, you can skip ahead. Although, you'll hear the story out of order, so you've been warned. And now, I think it's time to show off some of the coolest new features that we added, like the twisty cogs. Admittedly, we just tilted the giant wheels on their sides, but they play very differently and add a new twist to the game. Sorry. We also added the spinning levels. These massive rollers rotate the level around.
Oh, yeah.
And your job is to stay in the same spot.
Oh, yeah.
We had a lot of failed experiments to get here, like this giant spinning maze. But for a lot of our testers, once we nailed it down, these are a smash hit and really add a fresh spin to the game.
Yes, sir.
Okay, sorry, I'm done. And lastly, we were feeling extra diabolical and added disappearing.
It's like Monkey Ball. Yeah, I don't know if you guys know this, but Monkey Ball is this franchise of game that saw Get to Work and thought they could steal it and add monkeys. And they've been pretty successful with our IP and our gameplay mechanics. But we're gonna persevere as the original. Did we sue them? Nah, we're not about that lawsuit stuff. We're just gonna keep doing our own thing.
Floors. It's just a regular level, but there's just something about a little bit of time pressure that makes people crack.
God, man, come on.
And with 6 brand spanking new worlds and 62 total individual levels, the Doinkler portfolio was complete.
Dude, I legitimately think this is like a second game. There's so much shit in this thing, and it's free, and it feels like it's like Monkey Ball 1 versus Monkey Ball 2. I'm not even kidding. I'm not kidding. There's like so many levels that it's like you got a new game.
And now it was time to start building the tower.
Crazy release it for free? Not my call. Not my call to release it for free. I'll tell you that right now. Not my call, but Isto Studio.
This is the Doinkler Special, a giant tower that uses most of the pieces from the Doinkler portfolio, but removes all of the forgiveness of the restart button and stacks it all on top of each other. Because we figured if you fall, you can always practice in the Doinkler portfolio and then come back. We really wanted to challenge the most hardcore players, and because of that, there's way less recovery. Don't get me wrong, there's still some, we're not animals. So everyone will still be able to make some progress, but the further you go up, the less recovery there is.
Yeah, it's like not far at all.
Oh, God.
Oh, no. Dude, I can't. There's...
Dude, I don't know who's gonna beat this. This is actually really fucking hard, but it is gonna be so fucking funny to watch Wubby try this, or something, or one of the levels at least.
You'll also notice that we're using this basic prototype texture all throughout the tower. And there's a reason for this. The DLC is free. Did I mention it was free?
Yes, sir.
It took me nearly 4 months to properly texture the main game, and your boy wasn't doing that for a free DLC. But more importantly, the tower is actually way more performant because of this. We don't have to load textures, and more importantly, we don't have to load baked light maps, which I explained in a previous video that you can watch here if you're curious. The tower runs faster than the main game with no loading hitches despite having way longer sightlines, which I'm pretty proud of. Most big tower rage games just have stuff pop in and out.
No shade
But I
on
think we've done a good
only
job
up
of
particularly.
optimizing it to look seamless, especially when you fall down. I mean, come on, you can see the entire level as you fall all the way from the top.
That's so frustrating.
Just bask in the glory
That's
of
so
this optimization and ignore all of the potential progress being lost as you plummet
That's
down
so
and
frustrating.
down and
That's
down. But this is a one-off thing.
so
I'm sure it
frustrating.
won't happen to you, so don't worry about it. Well, this is taking
Dude,
a while, so let me talk about Steam Leader.
I don't care that I'm involved with this game. There is zero chance if I had that fall that I wouldn't ult F4 instantly. Like, actually zero chance. I would...
Boards. Since this level was made to be nearly impossible, we figured it'd be more fun to see how far you can get and rub it in your friends' faces. So with Steam leaderboard integration, you can compare both in the main menu and in world how far you and your friends have gone.
That's
and
cool.
of course, we want to build some hype for the DLC, so we're excited to announce the Doinkler Special Challenge, a $500 cash prize for the first person to complete the entire tower from start to finish live on stream. The
$500 CAD. Dude, I just put $700 on a stupid prize for the last game. You should have told me about this. I would have put it towards this. I just wasted $700. So then you're gonna move any units.
entire run must be streamed since we're hoping it promotes the DLC, and you can't cheat or use mods. And you'll notice there's only a couple of slingshots throughout the entire tower, and most of them are nicely enclosed, so you sneaky speedrunners can't just fucking teleport up to the top like you did in the main game.
Yup.
Bro, halt's Maul. Holy shit.
Yeah, I would have done that too.
Yeah.
What the fuck was this jump pad? What the hell is that jump pad?
That's right. We learned our goddamn lesson. Now, there's a lot more that I would love to show you, like how maybe there's a brand new song from the folks who made the Dunset song, but maybe not, and I wouldn't want to spoil too much, so that's all I'm going to say. Go play the game when it comes out July 14th. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.
6 days. Dude, unfortunate that I am not in California on that day, but I will play it as soon as I get back. I'm sure Squeaks will be playing it. Anyway, cool fucking vid. Shout out to Isto. What a creative dude. What a good, fun dude to work with. Can you ban me all sub? That's a win-win. You're banned. Is he gonna sub? I just banned fake runny eggs. Are you gonna sub? I'm waiting. Are you a man of your word? Otherwise, you're getting unbanned. All right. You can't sub if you're banned? Wow. All right, you're actually just staying banned. I don't want to hear you talk again. Okay. What I would like to do Dude, Hera just messaged me, what are these names for? I don't remember asking for anything like this. Was he lying about the free games? He's joking. Okay. What am I looking for? I'm looking for the Get Smarter Saturday website. The Get Smarter Saturday website. Where is it? 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 Get Smarter Saturday website. I'm looking in my non-friends DMs. Look at this. This is what I just got sent. The caption was Atlas chugged. That's fucking awesome, dude. That's fucking awesome. What else? Where's the fucking GSS website? I've got to save this somewhere more useful. GSS. 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 Get Smarter Saturdays. Get Smarter Saturdays. GSSSaturday.com. That's what it is. GSSSaturday.com. All right. All right, we're going to watch. We got to learn. We got to learn some economics. We got to learn some real shit. It's time to get smarter, ladies and gentlemen. On a Tuesday. The problem with luxury, how accountants broke the NFL. That seems kind of interesting. How accountants broke the... I'm not really a football guy, but I'm an accountants guy. How accountants broke the NFL is my current leader. Ultra masculine white girl playlist while you're on your way to testicular torsion surgery, 1 hour long. Should we watch the full thing or maybe watch it twice so we catch things we missed the first time? China's debt problem is 300% bigger than America's. I feel like I just talked about this on the stream. We could watch it. Are we getting stupid? The great dumbening. Talk about that kind of too. Who broke the Democrats? They done been broke, bro. Republicans have a 2028 problem. Aiden Hall. What's the problem? Just run Trump again. You know what I'm saying? Am I right, folks? If he's this good this time, he's going to be even better on his third term. Can we get 4 more years, please? I guess I got to watch that.
Here's something I think you guys will be interested in. I've been meaning.
Well, I didn't know I was going to be taught to me by Harry Potter. I didn't know I was going to be told about Republicans' 2028 problem by fucking Daniel Radcliffe.
To read the comments from the last video about Democrats. It did very well, so I want to hear what you guys have to say. I'm sure the comments are going to be very behaved and cordial. It looks like there's a lot of Republicans watching my stuff, which is totally fine. But I think you guys need a video just for you. I'm not here to judge or rain on your guys' parade, but for all the winning you've had recently, there's a weird feeling in the air, right? Like something's on the horizon, you just can't put a pin in it.
True.
That's it. You don't have a candidate. Well, JD Vance may argue.
He's gonna destroy Trump's Horcrux. I hope he wins the fucking Triwizard tournament. JD Vance. Okay.
You otherwise, but you don't all seem super thrilled with him. If you saw my last video on the subject, you'll know I called it Who Broke the Democrats. There's a reason the title for this one is a little different. We know who broke or changed the Republicans. Come on, you can say it. I can't in the first minute of the video for monetization reasons, I think, but you can. That's close enough. All right, I think the future of the Republican Party is in some ways clearer than the Democrats.
You can't say Trump or you get demonetized? I say Trump all the time, and I make racks off it. What are you talking about?
Problem for the Democrats is they seem directionless. It leaves a lot of different paths open that we can speculate on. But for the Republicans, whatever happens will be a direct result of what they're choosing to do today. I think this slims down the possibilities for the future candidates and the future message of the party considerably. So we're gonna do something a little different.
It's like Voldemort.
In this video to get ready for 2020.
He's saying he's treating Trump like Voldemort, dude. He who must not be named. Show me that scar, dude. Put the bangs up.
28. Instead of running through a complete history of the party, dissecting what drives them, and rebuilding their approach from the ground up like
He's got a MAGA scar.
did last time, I've picked 3 examples of somewhat recent presidential elections that will give us what I think are the 3 possible paths for Republicans in 2028. There are similarities across all of them. You'll catch on pretty quickly. They all follow the tenure of a sitting Republican president, but the environments they operate in are drastically different from historical perspectives.
The boy who resisted. All right, I don't know if I can make it to this video because I'm just thinking of Harry Potter jokes, and I don't want to watch this whole tier list. How about we skip to the end and see what the tier list is? S tier, JD Vance, Marco Rubio, or Nikki Haley? Whack, whack, whack. Whack, 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 whack. Tucker Carlson could run and win, actually, low-key. I take that back. S tier for chance of winning? Tucker could do it. Low-key? If you're thinking of someone who could do the Trump thing, it could actually be Tucker. How is Mitt Romney not even on there? How do you think the current Republican Party is going to run Mitt Romney? There's no fucking war where they run Mitt Romney. there's not a million years where they would run Mitt Romney, dude. But they'd run Haley? No, I don't think they'd run Haley. I don't think this tier list makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think it's going to be Vance, right? 2028, it's going to be Vance. But it might be Tucker if he was interested. If Tucker truly went all in, ran Republican, he could do it. I think everyone else has got no aura in any way among current Republican voters. I don't know why Donald Trump is ain't no way. I wouldn't put him in ain't no way. You gotta leave a little option open for daddy, you know? All right. Tucker is against AIPAC, so there's no way he could run. That's why Cuomo trunched Mamdani, right? It's because voters will respond to that 100%. All right, let's watch a different video. Let's watch something where we can get something a little more relevant to now, you know? 2028 so far away. Let's get something a little closer to now. The Vow is the documentary on the girl from Smallville and the sex cult. Easy way to screw up steak. Okay. What if America had more than 2 parties, a 7-party system? This is just a lemonade stand video. The business of F1. Kind of interesting. How Liquid Death tricked the world into paying for water. I wasn't tricked. I just like it. I wasn't tricked. I just like it. how ASML makes chips faster with its new 400 million high NA machine. It sounds a little boring, but the views are so high. It's probably interesting.
All right, we're about to enter the high NA lab.
Behind this highly secured door in an ASML clean room, there's a giant $400 million machine.
It's bigger than a double-decker bus.
Made with such closely protected technical specificity.
Very complex. The most advanced machine tool in history.
That no filming's ever been allowed, even by ASML.
Sorry. Somebody said, catch me in the high AF lab. Love that. I love that, bro.
ASML's own team, until we flew across the world to see it.
We're here at ASML's headquarters in the Netherlands, where 100% of the world's extreme ultraviolet lithography machines are made, and now the next generation machines called high NA. We had to wear these bunny suits to protect these extremely precise machines
Why are
from
they called
getting
bunny
contaminated
suits?
by our own hair and skin cells.
This is high numerical aperture, high NA, the new generation of EUV machines, the only machines in the world capable of printing nanoscopic blueprints onto the most advanced chips.
That's so sick.
NVIDIA, Apple, Taiwan Semiconductor, Samsung, Intel, none of their advanced chips can be made without EUV.
And this company has that market completely cornered.
The first high NA machine.
I feel like this is taking jobs from humans with a magnifying glass. You know what I'm saying? I feel like a skilled artisan could just like eyeball it and then like, and now they have machines doing that. And it's like, what happened to the fucking craftsmanship of it?
Was installed in the US at Intel's Oregon chip fabrication plant, or fab, last year. Only 5 have ever been shipped.
Indeed, the machine is so big you can't ship it in once.
My fat ass thought it was the other type of chip. I know everybody makes that joke, but the way you said that makes me think maybe you were serious. You really thought when you saw this $400 million machine, it was to make potato chips?
So we break them into parts.
Now they're being ramped up to make millions of chips on the factory floors of the few companies that can afford them: Intel, TSMC, and Samsung. ASML says eventually high NA will be used by all its EUV customers, other advanced chip makers like Micron, SK Hynix, and Rapidus.
Without EUV, without very advanced logic manufacturing, most probably AI cannot happen.
CNBC went from ASML's labs in California all the way to its Veldhoven, Netherlands headquarters to bring you this never-before-seen look at the world's most advanced chip-making machine, and to ask its makers exactly how it works and what could go wrong amidst Trump's tariffs, export controls,
Exactly
and a
how
new
it
training
works?
facility coming to the U.S.
Are you a Chinese spy?
Suited up and through an air shower,
It's basically to blow off all the contamination from your suit and your clothes.
Oh, that's wild.
down several long hallways where humongous parts are being meticulously moved.
How many people would you say are working here 24/7? Inside the EUV factory alone, it's like 2,000 people. It's a 24/7 operation.
Damn, that's wild.
Essia Hadou took us to the restricted lab space where 40 years of ASML's technology research all comes together.
It takes approximately a year and a half to create the system.
Hadou leads the team that tests and qualifies the high-end.
Dude, I legitimately wonder if like someone at Huawei has watched this video and taken notes. Like anything they can see with regards to layout or
name machines here.
It still does blow my mind. I think
or
even
CIMC.
if you learn more about it, it blows your mind even more.
The big machine, at the end of the day, is used to transfer a pattern, which we store on a mask, onto a wafer. And then at the end of the day, you cut them in pieces, you package them, and then you end up in your phone.
Joost Benschop joined Dutch electronics giant
Joost.
Philips in 1984. 2 weeks later, ASML was founded as a subsidiary, conducting research out of a leaky shed nearby in Eindhoven. It broke off from Philips with an IPO in 1995, and 2 years later, Benschop helped spearhead ASML's first foray into EUV.
3-4 years later, we had enough confidence to put all our eggs in one basket called EUV. With hindsight, we can say we placed the right bet.
Sure.
On a yearly basis, I think we file several hundreds of patents on EUV.
Christophe Fouquet began
So
as CEO
European.
just over a year ago, but he's been with ASML more than 17 years.
We barely made it. I think sometimes people forget that, but EUV took us practically more than 20 years. I would say it's been a very risky investment because when we started, well, there was no guarantee the technology will work.
By 2018, ASML had shown that EUV was possible, and it's the same process used in High-NA. Here's how it works.
I mean, kind of similar thing happened with NVIDIA, and I got to be there for the tail end of that, which was, you know, Jensen Huang really, I think visionarily, pushed for the CUDA programming language that allowed GPUs to be used for other things than gaming, and that you could build AI and ML tools on top of them. And like many years that didn't pay off at all. It didn't do anything. Like, it was just expensive and it had a lot of developers on it. And I remember Jensen telling me personally, he's like, I don't think we should do it. And I was like, no, believe in yourself. This will pay off. Don't worry, Jensen. This is gonna be a good idea. And then he's like, all right, I'll keep doing it, but only if you personally code CUDA yourself. And then I did it. So pretty important.
Chips are built in a grid formation on thinly sliced wafers of silicon, each with up to 100 thin layers that make up billions of transistors that determine what the chips can do. These layers are printed using lithography, extremely precise rays of light projected through a mask of the chip design until they hit the surface of the wafer that's been coated with photoresist chemicals. ASML's older generation DUV machines, which it still makes, use rays of deep ultra...
Wait, I have a joke. Can you say... Okay, sure. That's a $400 million machine. What's your joke? You said say $400 million machine. I have a joke. What's your joke? What's the joke, dude? You haven't even said anything yet. What do you mean you said you had the joke ready? Crossroads. $400 million machine? You mean Atrioc's PC after he plays the anime horsey game? Why would I buy a better PC after I play the anime horsey game? That's the joke? We stopped the whole stream for that.
Violet light with a wavelength of 193 nanometers. Nikon and Canon in Japan are still competitors in DUV. But ASML's real breakthrough came with that bold bet on a technology many thought was impossible, using even shorter wavelength extreme ultraviolet light, EUV, something that to this day no other company does.
A few more people tried for many years, but the size of the investment, the commitment you have to have, I think discouraged quite a few people.
Transistors have gotten so small, down to 10,000 times thinner than a human hair, that ASML
I
decided...
just want to pause here and explain something that's so important. All right. What he's saying is, it was so fucking expensive to make this latest and greatest, you know, ultraviolet, sub-EV, whatever, that when other people try it, they're like discouraged because they have to spend all this money. And then when they do spend that money, they won't even have clients because everybody's already buying from ASML. They already trust ASML. So it's a huge investment with no guaranteed return. This is why sanctions on the highest end stuff usually backfires. It fucking backfires. Because right now, if a Chinese company tried to do EUV, they would spend all this money and then they'd have no clients. Okay? But when you ban people from getting EUV from ASML, then they have to buy from the Chinese company. So they have guaranteed clients. You turn it from this passive thing to a guaranteed thing. They get a free moat of consumers. You're giving them clients that make this huge investment pay off. Yes. This is a problem with both Biden and Trump. It's just like there's a lot of evidence that these sanctions are backfiring. They're just making it easier and better for Chinese companies because they get guaranteed clients.
The commitment you have to have, I think, discourage quite a few people.
Transistors have gotten so small, down to 10,000 times thinner than a human hair, that ASML decided to create its own source of smaller, more precise EUV light. At a wavelength of 13.5 nanometers, it's the width of just 5 DNA strands laid side by side.
So small that it gets absorbed by almost everything, and that's why this whole system needs to be in a vacuum.
This tiny thread may look like the strand of a spiderweb, but it's actually molten tin being shot out at 50,000 droplets a second.
What?
The tin droplets are vaporized with a laser, and those tiny explosions are what emit photons of EUV light.
This is called a CO2 laser.
Who the fuck came up with that? Droplets of molten tin shot with a laser?
It's been used in the car industry for many years. They would cut through steel with one of these. We use 4 of them to shoot at one of these tiny tin droplets to generate a plasma which is hotter than the sun. That plasma generates EUV, and that EUV is captured by this collector mirror that comes from Carl Zeiss and brings the light into our scanner.
The light bounces off of mirrors that aim it through the lens, much like how a camera works. But because EUV gets absorbed by typical mirrors, German optics company Zeiss made specific mirrors just for ASML that are the flattest man-made surfaces in the world.
That's awesome.
And then the light is emitted through the projection optics onto the wafer, which is about here. So this is the wafer table.
When the EUV finally hits photoresist chemicals on the surface of the silicon wafer, it prints the minuscule blueprint that makes up the chip. The aim needs to be so precise, TSMC says it's equivalent.
That's actually so funny, though. It's actually so funny with what you said, that all of this miracle of science, this incredible, generations of the smartest minds ever working together, hundreds of millions of dollars, is to make a chip so that you can play a horse girl game that makes your brain dopamine light up. It's also that across the world, someone can play a game where they fucking press a button to make the bar fill up on their horse girl. That's why we use all this power in science.
That makes up the chip. The aim needs to be so precise, TSMC says it's equivalent to shining a laser from the moon to hit a coin on the Earth. EUV made up less than 8% of ASML's total number of machines sold in 2024. 44 EUV machines versus 374 cheaper DUV machines. But with a price tag of $220 million, EUV made up 38% of ASML's system sales revenue.
But the cost of the chips the tool is going to create is going down.
Because you're the only company in the world that makes these machines, what's stopping you from setting the price even higher?
Well, what stops us is Moore's law says that we need to continue to drive costs down. This allows you to go to the next node, and then the next node, and then again the next node. If this was to stop, then everyone gets stuck.
I mean, that's not why. If the cost is
ASML
too high,
began developing its
then
latest
it'll incentivize other people to step in
high-NA
and
machines around 2016. Inside, all the same processes still happen with the same EUV light source, but there's one key difference.
We increase the aperture of the opening angle of the lens.
High-NA stands for high numerical aperture, meaning it has a larger lens opening, increasing the angle at which the light is captured by the mirrors. More light coming in from steeper angles allows high-NA machines to capture increasingly small designs on chip masks, so they can be projected in one exposure step, whereas original lower NA machines reach higher resolution to project these tiny designs using multiple
This is
exposures
so
through
unreal.
multiple masks.
1 become 2, then 2 become 3, 3 become 4. And when the number increases, it gets very complex process-wise, and the yield goes down.
But with a higher NA, resolution improves, and the small designs can be printed with fewer masks, saving time and money.
The larger the number, the smaller the thing you can print.
But this higher NA also comes with a much higher price tag for one main reason.
The higher the NA of an optic, the bigger the mirror you have to use, and therefore the bigger the system.
These machines also take up a huge amount of power.
How much power do these machines take?
I think they take too much. If we don't improve the power efficiency of our AI chips over time, the training of the models could consume the entire worldwide energy. And that could happen around 2035. Since the moment we
Yeah, well, you should not do that.
2018, we have reduced the power, the energy needed per wafer exposure by more than 60%.
ASML says its machines print about 200 wafers per hour, 24/7, 365. The goal is several hundred per hour.
You can print, at the end of the day, millions of these wafers per year.
At a conference in February, Intel said it started making chips with High-NA, using it for some 30,000 wafers
Yeah,
so
good
far,
job, Intel.
and that it's about twice as reliable as previous models. And Samsung said High-NA could reduce its cycle time by 60%.
High-NA means two things. First and foremost, shrink, so there's more devices on a single wafer. And secondly, by avoiding multiple patterning, you can make them faster and you can make them with higher yield.
In reality, every
China.
chip is made using multiple different lithography techniques at different resolutions.
Every chip consists out of like 100 different layers. Most of the layers are actually made with deep UV, which is a much smaller system.
It's so crazy.
Legacy DUV machines sell for less, $5 million to $90 million, but still make up over half of ASML's sales.
The older machines are in high demand. Many of the chips we use in our daily life do not require EUV. If you press the button to open the window in your car, unlikely an EUV-based chip is needed.
Turns out ASML sells a lot of its legacy machines to China, although US export controls prevent it from selling EUV there. It's a ban that started under the first Trump administration.
The Trump administration is very focused on ensuring that China does not get access to the most advanced tools and chips that are required to power AI.
So without access to ASML's EUV machines, could China develop its own?
I feel like it's a real long shot that China could enter this space. But right now, China's really figuring out ways to take things like 7 nanometer, the most advanced nodes that can be done without EUV, and figuring out ways to scale them. And they've been able to do that successfully in some areas, like in smartphones and personal devices.
Still, export controls haven't stopped China from stockpiling ASML's less advanced machines.
At one point recently, up to 49% of your business was in China. What happened there, and what is that number at now?
We had a huge backlog in China because we got order in 2022 at the peak of the market. And in 2023-24, the rest of the world can.
This video was, what, 2 months ago? I think in April, China made a 1 nanometer chip. I remember seeing. But did they, what? China moves closer to creating crucial tool that allow to build cutting edge chips. SMIC, EUV lithography machine. Have they made? It just feels like they're running full speed ahead on it. If China gets EUV technology, then the sanctions don't even matter anymore. And all that talk about them being 10 years behind is going to be... yeah, I don't know. I mean, no one knows till we know, but the breakthroughs seem fast.
Went down. So basically, we could use our capacity to fulfill this backlog. End of 24, last quarter, the part of China in our business went down to 30%.
US concern over advanced tech making its way to China has accelerated amidst the generative AI race. But that boom has also sent demand for chips and the machines that make them soaring. And with it, chip stocks, including ASML's, which hit an all-time high in July. Still, it's declined some since as the chip industry faces uncertainties, chief among them, Trump's tariffs.
Any idea how tariffs are going to impact ASML?
Well, the short answer is I don't know. We don't know. And if anybody would know, you could make a lot of money, but we don't.
In its first quarter earnings reported last month, ASML missed on order expectations amid tariff uncertainty.
I suspect ASML will come in and advocate for a very low to minimal to no tariff on their machines.
The impact of tariffs is complicated by ASML's complex web of 800 global suppliers and the winding worldwide path ASML's machines take before arriving in a fab. Each High-NA machine is made up of 4 subsystems, manufactured in Connecticut, Germany, the Netherlands, and California.
The big 4.
Each module is shipped separately to ASML's headquarters in Veldhoven, where they're put together, tested, then disassembled again.
Does anybody in here live in Connecticut? Can you sneak into one of these packages? Just like hide in the box till they open you up in the factory and then blend in, okay? Blend in the Netherlands. And then write down the secrets to the DUV 2 nanometer process. Then send them to me, and I'll sell them to the Chinese for big profit. It'll be good for the stream. Okay?
For fabs in places like the US, or more frequently, Asia.
How do you ship something this massive?
Yeah, it takes about 7 Boeing 747s to ship this whole thing, and it's about 25 to 30 trucks.
For years, Asia has made up more than 80% of ASML's business. But the US share, around 17% in 2024, is growing fast, especially as Intel builds new chip fabs in Ohio and Arizona, and TSMC is now in volume production in Arizona too.
So there's a lot
Let's
of
go
chip
Arizona!
customers in the US. So there's I would say, a good reason to have chip manufacturing.
When we first got a look at EUV in 2022, ASML had about 32,000 employees. Today, that number's grown to 44,000, and 8,500 of them are in the US, like Eric Ma, who's been with ASML in San Jose, California for 18 plus years.
Have you gotten to
San Jose sucks.
see the High-NA machines?
Yes.
What is it like?
Oh, it's a huge.
Of ASML's 60 global offices, 18
Well said.
of them are in the US,
Well said.
including a manufacturing site in Connecticut and R&D sites in San Diego and here in San Jose.
We're here at ASML's Silicon Valley, California location, and behind me is a metrology machine. This one has 25 beams of electrons that are used to test the different microchips to make sure that the yield is going to be good.
Okay.
For High-NA in the US, it's likely that
At NVIDIA, we used to test them by taste. So I'll grab one of the wafers and I'll go put it on my tongue. Kind of like you put Nintendo Switch cartridge on your tongue. And then I'd be like, yeah, that one's good. This yield's good. And then we would print that whole series of chips. It's like the chicken.
Arizona could be a major hub. Many of ASML's first High-NA shipments went to Intel last year, and the struggling US-based chip maker is building a giant new chip fab in Chandler, Arizona.
Intel has been, for many years, a formidable partner for ASML. We're the first company to believe in EUV and the first company to work with us to develop EUV. They have done the same on High-NA. And I think that moving forward, the role of Intel for the US autonomy, independence on semiconductor is still very critical.
But TSMC is far ahead of
Get
Intel
it
in
together,
advancing
Intel!
shipments. We recently visited TSMC's new fab north of Phoenix, the most advanced chip fab on US soil. The need for High-NA there will likely come soon, with ASML's original EUV machines in use now.
In order to hook one up requires something
Damn, these
over
guys are cool.
2,000 electrical connections, over 2 kilometers of cabling, 100,000 parts, 40,000 bolts. We're talking about massive.
With so many EUV machines in Arizona, ASML is, for the first time, bringing a training facility to the US. Its only other training centers are in the Netherlands, Taiwan, and Korea.
That's wild.
We're planning to open that in the next few months in Arizona with the idea that we could train 1,200 people every year on EUV.
It's wild. It's all in Arizona. We have any Arizona heads in the chat? Arizona's where the whole American chip revolution's happening. Go get jobs there, dude, for easy money.
As chip making shows no signs of slowing in the US or elsewhere, ASML is already hard at work on its next generation machine, Hyper-NA.
With an even larger NA that can print even smaller features.
I heard it could be up to $700 million. Do you have any price?
Oh, it's way too early to mention the number, but typically price goes up. So no, I don't think it's going to be that high.
Despite market headwinds, Fouquet told CNBC that customers will need Hyper-NA within 10 years.
Anything you can tell us?
Won't the heat in Arizona dry them up? No, it's actually a common misconception. The chips, when they come out of the process, are all like, they're wet and you have to dry them off. So they like to sun dry them. They put all the chips out into a big, they roll out a tarp on the outside and they dump them. And then the sun just like, it's like when you're turning grapes into raisins. You get them nice and sun dried. Yeah, like sun chips, exactly. And that's where you get the extra ultraviolet. Yeah, exactly. You put them on your windowsill like a pie. Xi Jinping floating on the wafted scent from the chip pie as he tries to steal it. Whoa! 625K views one day ago? How America's debt spiral could spark the next crisis? This is a video made for me. America's debt spiral? Next crisis? Tons of views one day?
Our fiscal situation is a 350-pound, 2-pack a day smoker on the ICU table.
The U.S. federal...
Dude, that's not a fun thing for your Treasury Secretary to be saying.
Pack a day smoker.
Scott Messett, you are in charge of this. And you're handing him cigarettes. The fucking BBB was like, here's heroin. Here's a fucking double cheeseburger.
On the ICU table.
The U.S. federal budget is on an unsustainable path.
We're gonna be broke really quickly unless we get serious about dealing with our spending issues.
There's no shortage of voices sounding the alarm about the national debt. America's borrowing levels are currently the same size as the entire economy and are expected to skyrocket from here. That's because the U.S. spends way more than it brings in and then borrows to cover that deficit.
There's plenty of debate on how to close that gap. Raise taxes,
Tell us, Leslie.
Cut spending, a combination of both. No doubt any solution demands hard choices, but...
No, we're just going to raise spending and cut taxes. We're just going to say nah. And we're just going to someone else will figure it out. Someone else will figure it out, bro.
What are the actual consequences if the deficit gets out of control?
I often liken this to the invisible dog fence, where you really don't want to hit it, but you won't know until you do. And it seems like the U.S. is almost intent on finding out where that tipping point is.
Here, we'll explore...
That is kind of a good way to put it. It does feel like that to me. That's why I'm almost like... It just feels like we all want to know what happens. Collectively as a society, we've decided we're just going to drive this car directly at this cliff, and we're going to find out just to see, like, are we really going to fall? Is there really going to be a problem? I think that is
not how to fix the deficit, but to figure out what could happen if we don't. We'll focus on 3 key areas: the potential market fallout, economic ripple effects, and international implications. Even though debt has been central to America since 1776, we haven't yet seen a tipping point.
Nice.
For much of the nation's history, the U.S. tried to balance the budget. That changed toward the end of the 20th century.
1991, 1990 were periods when there was a lot of uncertainty about our economy. I remember I was at that time co-senior partner at Goldman Sachs, and a lot of our clients were very uncertain of what was going to happen, and deficits played a big role in that.
This is Robert Rubin. He advised Bill Clinton on his presidential campaign, The Transition, and later joined the administration. He ultimately served as the 70th Treasury Secretary.
I'll never forget, we had a meeting of the economic team, and at some point he looked at us and he said, this is a threshold issue. It's going to be difficult politically, but this is what we have to do. And that is indeed what we did.
Tonight at midnight, America puts an end to 3 decades of deficits and launches a new era of balanced budgets and surplus.
Fucking new era lasted 3 years. Bro, you're out of office because of a blowjob in like fucking a year and a half. Then Bush comes in and it's gone instantly. New era. Dude, it lasted Lasted about as long as COVID.
Pluses.
It was the first time since 1969, but the surplus was short-lived. Since then, the U.S. has had several rounds of tax cuts, multiple expensive wars, a financial crisis, and a pandemic, all contributing to an historic fiscal hole.
It's very, very roughly about
Well,
one-third from tax
just
cuts.
to be fair, right?
And a pandemic.
Just to be fair, there's nothing we could have done about this, right? Like, we had to have the tax cuts.
Multiple.
We had to have the expensive wars. We had to handle the financial crisis with a giant bailout.
Expensive wars, a financial crisis,
And then I shouldn't have eaten that bat. That's on me.
and a pandemic, all contributing to an historic fiscal hole.
It's very, very roughly about one-third from tax cuts, one-third from spending increases,
I
and
forgive you. Thank
one-third
you.
from emergencies. Those emergencies were the right time to borrow, the other two, not so much.
Kent Smetter's team at Wharton creates models that show how policy changes impact the federal budget.
What does the model tell you in real time about the current state of our deficit?
Fiscal policy is not sustainable. The economy essentially blows up. There's so much debt under current law.
I can't think of a job that would be more frustrating. What a waste of time. To spend all your day creating models that just tell you something that you know is not going to change. Just making models that show if you do this, you can cut debt, you can do this, cut debt, you can do this, raise taxes, and then no one does it. The Congress completely ignores you. The president completely ignores you.
That fixed income markets, bond markets will collapse.
Smetter's model shows that collapse could happen within 20 years.
If Congress really doesn't get its act together and try to figure out some grand
So much
bargain
less
that
than 20.
solves this problem, then there's only one mathematical way of getting out of this, and that is for some type of default to happen.
A default is when a borrower can't make payments on a debt, but that's unlikely to happen to America because we have ways to get around it.
The United States can pay any debt it has because we can always print money to do that.
If you print bonds in your own currency, what happens to the currency? Is it
The problem will not be a default. We're not going to default. We're going to print, and then you get the problems associated with that.
can be a question? Because you don't default.
We just cranked up the printing press. That now means there are more dollars in the economy that are chasing the same amount of goods and services. That's where inflation comes from. And that's what we've seen throughout history of other countries that have struggled with high debt.
What do you think the
Just don't
likelihood
tell
is
anyone?
that the U.S. does experience a crisis related to its deficit or debt levels?
I think that there's more than a 50% chance that in 3 years, give or take a year or two, that we will experience a trauma if we don't.
So I'll be honest with you. When the guy earlier said within 20 years, I kind of laughed and I was like, it'll be way sooner than that. The reason I said that is because I just read this guy's book. So I'll let him take it from here. But I just read this guy's book and I am kind of debt pilled on what Ray Dalio was saying. But the way he laid it out in that book did speak to me. And it does feel like it's around a 3-year thing. Just because, and I'll explain it like very shortly, just because we are already going out to market and asking to borrow money, this is called a treasury auction, and some days we're getting no bids. Like people are just not wanting to buy our currency or buy our debt right now. The book's name is How Countries Go Broke. How Countries Go Broke.
Deal with this well.
Ray Dalio.
And the book is just, it's 2 pages long, 72-point font, and it says, "They go woke." And that's it. It's an expensive book. I feel like it's a valuable lesson, but I didn't get a lot out of it.
Been a global macro investor for 50 years, known for starting Bridgewater Associates. He's been concerned about government debt levels since the 2008 financial crisis.
I think of myself being very much like a doctor. I watch the plaque buildup in the system. I always said it was unhealthy, but I have not said before that the supply-demand picture is a very serious picture as it is now.
That's because Dalio has studied
That's the
how
book.
countries go broke.
This is the book.
And says his research across centuries found that there are cycles that have led to big debt bubbles and busts, and he's deeply concerned about what he sees.
The supply that's going to be produced by deficits is greater than the demand for that debt. Like watching somebody having a circulatory system condition, you can measure those things. It's getting very severe.
To raise money and help pay for the growing deficit, the U.S. government issues and sells treasuries. When investors start getting
They're
jittery,
just saying what I was just saying. Actually, maybe this video is too close to me. I feel like
about too much
this is what I
debt
just
flooding
said.
the
This is
markets and the risk of inflation, they'll insist they get paid even higher rates to buy treasuries. Ed Yardeni first started noticing this behavior
Not
in the
pre-watched.
80s,
Pre-read,
a
I guess.
response to the raging inflation from the prior decade.
There was a lot of fear among investors that they could get burned again. And as a result of that, I coined the phrase bond vigilantes with the notion that if the Fed and the government weren't going to be responsible, weren't going to be the sheriffs in town to manage the economy in a way that would keep inflation down, that the bond vigilantes would do it.
Bond vigilantes is the stupidest fucking name of all time. I just want to explain to you guys what a bond vigilante is. It's like if your friend Carl is in incredible fucking debt, doesn't have a job, smokes fucking crack every day, and then goes, "Hey man, can I borrow $5,000?" And you go, no. Now you're suddenly a debt vigilante. All it means is they're not buying our debt. They're not some crazy vigilante for doing that. There's not, I don't know why it's named that way. It is just people deciding to stop buying American debt, and they suddenly get called like the bond vigilantes. It's like if you're like, McDonald's is too expensive, I'm not going to buy their burger anymore. Now you're a fucking burger vigilante. You're just a consumer who doesn't...
Yardeni wrote in his newsletter in 1983 that the vigilantes were concerned about a $200 billion deficit. Today, the levels are 10 times that.
The bond vigilantes are more powerful than ever, and the question is, are they going to use that power, that extraordinary impact that they could have on the bond market, which is now more important than ever, and push bond yields up to levels that cause a recession in order to bring inflation down.
One country that experienced a mini debt crisis in the fall of 2022 was the United
The
Kingdom.
Liz Truss!
Liz Truss, who was then the prime minister, unveiled a plan to cut taxes by £45 billion.
I have a bold plan to grow the economy through tax cuts and reform.
Immediately, the pound collapsed. Investors dumped UK bonds. The local pension funds were forced to sell to manage their risk, all of which threatened a downward spiral. The Bank of England had to come in and stabilize the market, and the government quickly undid the tax cuts. But Prime Minister Truss never regained credibility, and she resigned after just 6 weeks in the role.
Sheesh.
But can that type of crisis, where the market quickly loses confidence, happen in the U.S.?
It's a risk that we think remains low in terms of the probability of this occurring here in the United States.
PIMCO is the world's largest bond manager, overseeing $2 trillion. Back in December, PIMCO said it was cutting exposure to long-dated U.S. debt because of deteriorating deficit dynamics. Can you explain more about your positioning there and just your overall concern as it pertains to the deficit?
The U.S. continues to be the global reserve currency.
Yes, sir.
We have an incredibly dynamic economy.
Yes,
we
sir.
have very strong institutions.
Well,
so we will likely continue to attract a significant share of global capital. We do see other countries' sovereign debt that looks at least as good as the rate levels of the United States and is running much more prudent overall fiscal policy. So we're not running from U.S. treasuries. We're just looking to diversify into other areas of the world.
Economists try to estimate
You're
how
just
much
buying
investors
less
will
American
want to
debt.
be compensated for longer-term risks like the federal budget and inflation. That's something called the term premium. If that is rising, it may mean investors are experiencing more uncertainty about macro conditions.
They are.
Whereas if it's declining, there's likely more stability. It's not a perfect statistic and models tend to vary, but in January, the term premium hit its highest level in more than a decade. It's pulled back a bit since then, but remains elevated.
If we don't see signs of attempting to get debt under control, those probabilities of a more crisis level type situation occurring will steadily go higher with time.
Love that.
And then again, when people worry about these tail scenarios, including PIMCO, we want to get paid a little bit more to combat against those types of risks.
The more expensive borrowing costs become, that has broad ramifications for the economy.
Because it can affect our economy, the health of our economy, and the growth of our economy.
Okay.
Thanks to a combination of soaring debt and high.
Now, good YouTube etiquette here would be to, in the last half of the video, tell us why it's going to be all right. Just tell us why there's not really a problem. We can just do what we've been doing. Like, you set up the problem, you got me worried, but now you need to wrap it up with like a, but we're all
rates.
good.
The U.S.
Okay?
is expected to spend the most it ever has, nearly $1 trillion on interest payments this year. The Congressional Budget Office expects net interest costs in 2025 to surpass spending on Medicare, Medicaid, and national defense.
Squeezing out other parts of the budget, whether it's tax cuts you want, whether it's higher defense, whether it's higher social spending, all of those things get squeezed out when your interest piece of the pie is growing as it is now.
The cost to service the U.S. debt is expected to be 18% of total tax revenue this year.
Love that.
In 2022, that figure was less than 10%.
Let's get that number up.
You've borrowed so much that your interest payments are growing as a share of the federal budget.
I think it'll be dope if we can get to a time where every tax dollar we collect just goes to paying interest on previous debt. I think that'd be awesome. And we don't have any roads, we don't have any schools, we don't have any military, we don't have any healthcare. We everything that we collect should just go towards interest. It'll feel good in a way.
And your debt is growing as a share of the economy, and it leaves you in a situation where it's slowing economic growth.
The tax and spending legislation that just passed has garnered mixed reactions about what it may mean for the deficit. The nonpartisan CBO has estimated it would increase the deficit by trillions
Wrong, fake
over
news.
the next decade.
I tell policymakers in D.C., you might have your big, beautiful plan, but fixed income markets, they're the Mike Tyson. You might have your big, beautiful plan until you get punched in the face because they often are not polite. They often just break instead of bend.
But some Republicans believe the One Big Beautiful Bill Act will spur economic growth thanks to tax cuts.
I don't believe in the CBO forecast. So, Sarah, let's just look at common sense.
All right, tell us, Scott Bessent.
That if the bill, for some reason, hadn't passed, we would have had the biggest tax hike in history.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who was unavailable to be interviewed for the piece, says the administration's focus is to grow the economy faster than the debt. His long-term goal is to cut in half the current 6.7% deficit to GDP ratio, which is the highest outside of a war or recession. That question has left bond vigilantes on the sidelines for now.
I think the bond vigilantes are essentially correct. The U.S. should not be running a deficit like this. But for whatever reason, we're not at the levels yet where debt sustainability is.
Dude, crazy. Here's from Tom. This guy's the biggest everything is always up shill of all time. This guy's Tom. He just goes on TV and tells everybody everything's about to moon. It's about the S&P is going to be at 50,000. Yeah, he's a perma bull. So for him to say anything is crazy.
That could change quickly, and if debt levels go unchecked, the U.S. risks leaving a weaker economy to the next generation.
It used to be that people would say, it's okay to borrow from the future generations because they're going to have a higher standard of living anyhow. But right now, it's a very risky moment where it's quite clear for younger generations, they don't know exactly what they're inheriting.
I'm excited to talk to everybody.
I mean, if we can somehow get this to where all the problems fall on Gen Alpha, we could agree to that, right? Like, if we can just keep this ship going, until it's Gen Alpha's problem. But Zoomers are okay. Millennials are okay. Is that? Can we get a deal on that one? This could be. I mean, they'll figure it out. They have Skibbity Toilet and shit.
Scanlon is an author and content creator focused on economic issues.
Like, maybe, obviously, we're like running out of rope here. Like, they've kicked the can so long, and it's like, we have the hot potato. It's the end of the stick. We're running out of room. But maybe if we print enough and we delay enough and we change the rules enough, we can do one last final huge can kick for like 15, 20 more years to where we get ours. And then we put it all on them. You know, one more.
This day, she was speaking at George Mason University to a crowd of faculty and researchers.
What structural issues do you see as the most significant threats to economic stability or growth in the next decade? What's your view of debts and deficit in that assessment?
I think the debt and the deficit have to be analyzed. The interest payments are quite a weight, and rates probably aren't going down anytime soon.
Scanlon says young people risk not ever having access to Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare.
Not only are they not going to have access to those services, but they're also going to have to pay for those who did before them. And so it's kind of this double-edged issue.
A growing debt load also limits the government's ability to fight off an emergency should there be one.
2008 financial.
Listen, I don't mind not having Social Security. For me, it's an honor just to pay for the elderly of today. My dream would be to work my whole life paying into it, and then right as it's my time to check cash out, they say it's all out. And they say, but you did a good job for the elderly before you. I guess that's just my, that's just where I would, that's the plan. We'd be heroes. Just something to make me grind harder. Yeah, exactly.
Crisis. COVID, we actually used debt to get our way out. People got used to those checks in the mail and other types of benefits and so forth. What happens now when debt itself is the problem? You can't use debt to get out of the debt problem.
Watch us!
It's too late at that point.
One thing that the past year
Watch
and the growing
us.
geopolitical environment have shown us is that we should assume there will
Bet,
be
dude.
future emergencies. We are not in an emergency-free moment.
When Admiral Michael Mullen was asked back in 2010 what he thought was the biggest threat to national security, his answer shocked the nation.
I responded that the most significant threat was our national debt, which was a bit of a surprise. The reporter and others actually would have expected some kind of weapon system or some kind of country or something like that.
Mullen served as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff under Presidents George W. Bush and Barack Obama.
Typically each year, the Defense Department budget takes up about half of that uncommitted money. As interest rates possibly would go up, as our debt continued to increase, and we pay off our debt with some of that uncommitted money as well, it would just squeeze the defense budget at a time of increasing international and geopolitical concerns, where it was my view the defense budget really needed to at least be maintained or
Well, don't
rise,
worry. You got both,
over
I guess.
This year, the U.S. is expected to spend about $93 billion more on interest payments than on defense.
A great power is spending more
so
on interest
crazy.
payments than on defense. It won't be great for very much longer. The U.S. crossed that threshold last year.
Ferguson says the debt burden draws in scarce resources with less for
Yeah,
national
that's in the book,
security,
too.
which leaves an otherwise great power vulnerable to a military challenge.
Unless interest rates come crashing down, which they haven't yet done, that means that interest payments are going up. So that is a really major problem for a superpower, that it is in a game of chicken with another superpower.
I mean,
Do our adversaries?
it's wild because both China and America are taking on debt. It's just like this. It's like the Cold War, but we're both Russia. I don't know what's gonna happen, bro. We're both just fucking.
Pay attention to our debt levels and our deficits and see that as a potential vulnerability and a potential weakness in light of all this instability?
I would think that Putin in Russia, Xi Jinping in China, see this as a vulnerability. And you've heard President Xi in China over the last certainly decade plus talk about the United States being in decline.
The irony is China is one of the largest foreign holders of U.S. treasuries, although it's been steadily reducing
Yeah,
its
they have
stash.
less.
International holdings of U.S. treasuries were near a record $9 trillion in April. Experts have warned that foreign creditors theoretically could use their bonds as financial leverage in a geopolitical disagreement.
We don't know exactly how many treasuries they have. Certainly it's probably about 800 billion, but there's more that's not even transparent. It's not clear that this would happen, but you could dump treasuries if one wanted to create a lot of different fiscal risks at one time.
Though dumping treasuries is unlikely, as the country would have to accept steep losses.
Yeah, I mean, you'd sell them at a loss.
Japan, one of the largest exporters to the U.S., holds...
They also like having the treasury because it allows them to balance their currency. They can sell some or buy some to get the exchange rate they want. So it's less likely than you'd think.
It's more than $1 trillion worth of U.S. debt, the most of any foreign country.
It really took off in the late 70s, in the 80s, as Japan was an exporting nation, accumulating dollars over time through the trade balance side of things, and they had to reinvest that money.
Here's an example of how that works. When a Japanese automaker sells a car to a U.S. consumer, the company receives, let's say, $30,000. The automaker needs to then convert that cash to Japanese yen to pay its expenses, like workers and suppliers. The money goes to a Japanese bank to help with the exchange. The bank then invests the dollars it receives into U.S. treasuries because they're safe and easily traded.
Yeah.
As the Trump administration reworks global trade relationships, there's a looming question around how it all could shift foreign appetite for treasuries.
Down.
The White House says higher tariffs will generate additional revenue to shrink the budget deficit.
It's our turn to prosper, and in so doing, use trillions and trillions of dollars to reduce our taxes and pay down our national debt, and it'll all happen very quickly.
The Tax Foundation estimates
All right,
that
I'm looking quickly. I'm looking forward to it.
Trillions of dollars, but that revenue would diminish when accounting for the broader economic impact. Eventually, the solution to the deficit is likely to come down to the hard work of budgeting.
Dangerously polarized moment that we're in, where partisan politics seems to be far more important to lawmakers than actually governing, has led both parties to adopt all of the easy things. They both love cutting taxes and growing spending.
Yes, sir.
I think it's going to be very difficult to turn this fiscal situation around without also looking at the underlying political challenges.
Do you still see this as the biggest threat to national security?
Great question.
The America
And
Party
my
will fix
answer is
this.
No. I actually think the political division in the country has risen to our biggest threat. The debt is one, education is another, the healthcare issue, the Social Security issue. That is going to take bipartisan support. It's going to take leaders from both sides of the political aisle to agree, and I think to compromise, in order to generate solutions which can move us ahead. And with the political
It's a
divide
bleak video,
seemingly
bro.
increasing, that becomes harder and harder.
He didn't mention female character leads in video games at all. So I feel like he doesn't have the finger on the pulse of what's actually at fault in this country. He didn't talk about video game journalists at all, who are a huge threat. Yeah, so I don't know. I feel like it covered some of what's the problem, but not all of it. Yeah, I mean, this video couldn't have said it better. This video's perfect. This video summarized and encapsulated things I've been talking about on the Clip channel forever and just fully agree with. This is like where my mindset is at on the debt. It's just, this is the way it's going to break down, and this is what's happening, and we're on this path, and it just feels like we're not going to do anything until there's a crisis. That's my current thinking on it, is that democracies won't react until there's a crisis, and there has to be a crisis. We have to have a problem. We have to have an empty bond auction. We have to have, we're just not proactive enough about like getting our shit in order. But we were able to, like, it's, the wild part is this beginning with Clinton. Like, they did do that. They did go, hey, it's getting to be problematic. We got to bring the deficits down.
America puts an end to 3 decades of deficits and launches a new era of balanced budgets and surplus.
And we did do that. Now, it was an easier time. I'm not going to deny that. It was easier. The economy was booming, less competition globally. China wasn't in the WTO. I totally get that, but they did do that. And we've just gotten way more politically divided since then. Should we go back to back with an Economics Explained why China's debt problem is 300% bigger than America's?
Over the last few years, there has...
Should we just throw it off on them? Let's do that. Click this video and see why we don't have to worry about it because China's 300% bigger.
Understandably been a lot of attention paid to the ballooning government debt in the USA. Interest repayments alone are now one of the largest government expenditures in the country.
Yeah, we heard
and
about
it only
this.
looks to be getting worse. New legislation is projected to only further widen the deficit between government income and spending, which means the rate of debt accumulation will have to increase to accommodate this.
Bad.
Now, the USA is a special economy, which for now at least controls the world's reserve currency.
We do have that.
It has more wiggle room to run these kinds of deficits before getting itself into too much trouble.
It is wild to think about what our borrowing costs would be if we weren't the reserve currency. I truly feel like in many ways, our level of debt is like a banana republic. It's like, we would be getting like, I don't know, we'd get like Argentina level fucking deals, but we have the reserve currency. Everything is just so advantaged. I mean, we do have some extraordinary industries. Some parts of our economy are world class. Obviously, I shouldn't downplay that. There's not many countries that can export, I don't know, high-end aviation and other things. We have these things, but streamers, of course. But we have Hollywood. Honestly, Hollywood's actually in its weakest point since its beginning. Right now, Hollywood has never been weaker than right now in the history of Hollywood. So much of it is filmed in different countries. Other countries have caught up in some ways. Platforms like Netflix are now global and make content globally for audiences that aren't even in America. The biggest theater market is in China, so movies try to like appeal to a Chinese audience as well, just as much if not more. Korea has K-dramas and K-pop. That's more of a music thing than just Hollywood. But like, there was a time when American pop was S++ tier, full cultural export, and now it's like, it's up there. But K-pop is just as big, if not bigger. I mean, Blackpink's probably the biggest, or one of the biggest groups in the world right now, and all the individual members are breaking records.
But it's also not magic. The US federal government is now the most nominally indebted institution in history. Eventually, through one means or another, someone is going to pay the price for this debt. Whether that's the next group of workers through higher taxes, everybody through inflation, or future generations through a complete economic collapse. The latter certainly being the popular option at the moment. But anyway, on the other hand, China outwardly seems like the flip side of this situation. It has its debts far more under control, being just 84% of GDP compared to 123% in the USA or 250% in Japan. And on top of that, it's actually one of the biggest purchasers of other people's debt. During the back and forth trade negotiations between the USA and China, one of the People's Republic's biggest hidden weapons was the fact that they owned hundreds of billions of dollars worth of US debt.
True.
The optics were pretty clear. The USA is the borrower taking on more and more debt, and China is the lender saving for the future. Except that's not exactly true. Just a little bit of digging under the surface reveals that China is arguably more indebted than the USA.
At the state level?
And depending on which numbers can be believed, its debt levels could actually be more than 3 times as high. But this all needs a significant amount of context. China is a country with a very different government, private sector, and overall economy. So, how bad is China's debt situation really? How are they proposing to use their own lending as an economic weapon? And finally, if debt is just debt, why is it treated so much differently in the eyes of economists? Here's
Good
something
questions.
that's already saved us a ton of stress in the past. Sailing, the easiest way to get mobile data when traveling abroad.
Oh, fucking ad read me. We're talking about debt.
So, big disclaimer time as always. Economic figures coming out of China, especially at a provincial level, are often unreliable.
True.
Data from institutions like the IMF and the World Bank is what most of this video will be based on, but even then, they rely on reporting from the government itself, and as we will actually explore a bit later, there are a long list of reasons why these numbers might be massaged a little bit. Okay, with all of that out of the way, one of the biggest differences between Chinese and US debt is who is actually doing the borrowing. In China, the debt is a lot better hidden and spread out over multiple levels of government corporations, and special entities that exist just for taking on debt off the books.
Right.
Now, of course, in the USA, the federal government is responsible for the vast majority of public borrowing, but the country also has state and local governments that do take out their own debt. The difference is that in the USA, all of this regional government debt collectively equates to about 12% of GDP. Which means, including federal
Damn,
debt,
California,
the
get it
country has
together.
a government debt to GDP ratio of about 132%. Not great,
Jesus.
not terrible. Again, considering the US.
Not great, not terrible. 132%. Above the peak of World War II level debt. Every country that tops, 120% debt GDP usually has a crisis. We're at 132. It's not great, not terrible.
Status as a global reserve. Now, in China, provincial governments have a lot more capacity and much more of an incentive to take on debt to fund big projects. Again, reliable figures are a little bit harder to pin down since the country does not have the same public reporting standards, but conservatively, the debt owned by provincial and local governments in China amounted to at least $12.6 trillion in 2023. That represents roughly 76% of the country's total output, which means collectively, Chinese government debt now equals 160% of their GDP, or about 30% higher than the USA's. Now, to make matters worse, that still doesn't account for state-owned enterprises, which in China performs something of a dual function between a private firm that wants to
the
return profits
SOEs.
and a government department that will operate to achieve the goals set down to them by the party. For example, the China State Construction and Engineering Corporation is the largest construction company in the world with over $320 billion in revenue. It does make a profit, but it's owned by the Central People's Government, which means two things. For starters, it builds what the government wants it to build, from small local infrastructure projects all the way up to the multi-billion-dollar Beijing airport. These strategic
Can't wait to be at that
developments
airport.
also extend
Xi Jinping, don't trust anything this video is saying. I don't believe it. All right, my king. You don't have any debt, and I can't wait to be there, and I can't wait to stream from China. Okay?
beyond the borders of the country as well. China State Construction and Engineering is involved in dozens of major construction projects with partner states, including the construction of an entirely new capital city in Egypt. These projects serve national interests, but they are not technically conducted or funded by the government itself. Instead, these companies just borrow the money so the government doesn't have to. Now, it is borderline impossible to know how much debt these companies have, because we don't even know how many of them there are. The China State Construction and Engineering Corporation is a massive and very high-profile example, but an investigation by Stanford University found that there are at least 391,000 fully state-owned firms in China, ranging from small civil operations all the way up to international banks. Beyond that, there are more than 1 million firms operating across the country with some level of state ownership. These state-owned enterprises are all highly leveraged and, again, conservatively are the equivalent of $30 trillion
Jesus
in
Christ.
debt. Now, if these companies default, the government will be in a position where it either loses these firms which do their bidding, or they'll have to step in to bail them out. Either way, that means collectively, between all of the different vehicles that the Chinese government uses to perform services in the Chinese economy, its debt is over 300% of its GDP. And it gets worse than that.
That's the number I heard
This is all
before.
assuming that Chinese GDP figures, as in the denominator down here, are actually reliable, which is debatable at best. A lot of economists question the official figures, and independent research has suggested that routine compounded inaccuracies in reporting means that the Chinese economy might be between 20% and 60% smaller than officially reported. That would mean that these debt figures could conservatively be as much as 450% of GDP.
So I have heard this line of thought, and there may be something to it, in that, the main thing is that China sets actual GDP targets for regions. So if you're like the manager of a province and you have to grow at 5%, they seem to always hit exactly the number. which implies a little bit of massaging. Do you know? If they always hit the exact fucking number, it implies that something's a little off. However, you know, I do want to say, just on the other side, a little fair and balanced here, the American GDP number is so heavily propped up by things like misallocated healthcare spending. like there's like a lot of deeply inefficient overspending done on things that boosts GDP, but if you actually broke it down, is like extremely wasteful, extremely, you know, it's administrative bloat, it's middlemen, it's you know, it's not real like economic growth. And I gotta say, like, some parts of China's GDP would be considered like the most clean and pure economic growth, which is like building more productive factories to make electric vehicles that are sold in different countries. Like, if you make a factory employing Chinese citizens that makes EVs made in China that are sold in Australia for a profit, you have built a pure vehicle of GDP growth. That is more money flowing into your country. So I just think it's messy. I would agree that there are parts of it, especially around state-owned enterprises, building, you know, things like unnecessary bridges that are inflated for sure, or are marked up or whatever. But there's a little bit of that on both sides.
GDP 3 times higher than in the US.
Is there a better denominator of GDP? Honestly, everything's better than GDP. GDP is the easiest. The more I read about economics, the more I found that GDP is used because it's easy, and it's like so imprecise, so inaccurate, is inflated by stupid things. Like, you can increase GDP without increasing productivity. Like if you get like immigration, a surge of immigration that year, your GDP will way rise, even if your economy is doing worse. Like, it's not very helpful to get any reliable things, but people keep using it because it's easy.
And the bad news doesn't stop there. Despite being a massive economy like the USA, China still doesn't have quite the same borrowing reputation. A lot of attention has been paid to the US debt being downgraded over time from AAA to AA+ with most rating agencies, thanks to a combination of high sustained borrowing, lower than recommended tax receipts, and the game of chicken that they like to play once every few months with their debt ceiling. Now, these downgrades do have an impact, and they can affect how cheaply a country can borrow. Someone looking for a low-risk fixed-income bond could lend money to the USA, but if a country like Switzerland was also selling bonds to raise money for their government, then they are a safer option, which means their interest rate should be lower, all other things being equal.
Yeah.
Countries' credit scores are just like individual credit scores. An 850 means lower rates because they have demonstrated that they are the lowest risk. Anything below that, and lenders normally want to see a little bit more interest to offset a little bit more risk.
Yep.
Now, China, on the other hand, is not rated AAA, or AA+, or AA, or AA-. It's rated just A+, which, to be clear, is still fine, but it means that most
Chinese parents, you know, there's only one grade that's acceptable, is all I'm going to say. And they had to do it.
agencies do recognise risks here, which in turn means China should need to pay a higher interest rate on all of this debt they've been accumulating. Except they don't. As of the time of making this video, the yield on a 10-year US Treasury bond is roughly 4.5%. The yield on an equivalent Chinese 10-year bond is just 1.7%, almost 3 times lower. So what is going on here? Why on earth would anybody lend money to the comparatively riskier Chinese government when they could instead get 3 times the yield lending money to the US government? Well, the assumption here is that the Chinese economy functions like a normal free market economy, which, especially in the case of macroeconomic instruments like this, it does not. The first difference is that a lot of people and institutions with a lot of money in China can't go and buy US Treasury bonds. China has strict capital controls on money leaving the country.
Yeah, I'll probably just say it, but my assumption is that they just mandate that Chinese banks have to buy Chinese bonds. And so all of the excess savings in China is funneled into their debt, which probably we'll end up doing. We'll probably end up doing that for American banks.
Which means even if investors did want to buy US bonds instead, this isn't going to be an option for them. This applies even to large institutions like banks, which, it's worth noting, are largely state-owned as well. So yeah, when the Chinese government wants to borrow money, it doesn't need to compete with every other country in the world also trying to borrow money as well. The other thing is that there aren't many other options like there are outside of China. When bond yields are low in a regular economy like, say, the USA, it motivates investors to move their money into other assets like stocks, real estate, or alternatives where they can get a better return. This is one of the reasons why normally lower interest rates will increase stock prices. But in China, investors don't really have those same options. Economists will always say that the stock market is not the economy, and normally that's used to explain why market returns consistently outpace overall economic growth, but in China, it's the opposite. Despite being home to the most intense economic development in history, the country's stock market is up less than 100.
Yeah, it's insane. It is insane. Their economy is like 20x in size since 2000, and their stock market's barely up. And in fact, it's been flat for like 20 years. So if you're like an average person in China, you just don't put money in the stock market because it doesn't, for your whole life, it hasn't provided any return. That's why they were all in real estate before, but then the real estate bubble popped, and now that's why there's so many people trying to like sneak money out of China. We talked about it in the podcast.
100% since the year 2000. Now that might not sound so bad, but by comparison, the US market has returned over 300%. And it's not like we've chosen an unflattering timescale here. In the last decade alone, the US market is up more than 150%, while China's has actually gone backwards. That means that the stock market is not exactly a great alternative to even really low yield bonds. A lot of the companies listed on these markets are partially or majority owned by the government, which means that returning profits to their shareholders is a secondary objective, with a priority being carrying out the desired functions of the government. Notably, even companies with no government ownership are still very much under the thumb of the CCP through heavy-handed regulations and outright political smiting. Now, arguably, there is need for stricter enforcement of regulation upon companies in markets like the USA,
definitely.
but China takes it too far in the other direction. Famously, the government blocked the listing of Jack Ma's Ant Financial Group after he got on the wrong side of leadership, and in 2023, when the government cracked down on tutoring of all things, it sparked a massive sell-off as people were spooked.
Yeah, this is true. There was these tutoring businesses in China. So in China, there's this Gaokao exam that's like so incredibly important for your life. Everybody studies for it. It's like insane the amount of work they put in. It is very determinative of where you're going to land, what colleges you'll get into. And so people spent a lot of money on like private tutors. And it was this insane bidding war. All these middle class or lower families were throwing huge amounts of their savings into private tutors and tutor companies. And China did something I think was pretty foolish, which was try to attack the symptom instead of the cause. So they tried to shut down all the tutoring companies. They made it illegal. But like they didn't change how important the test was. So they banned the tutoring companies, and then, obviously people just found different ways to tutor their kids. Like it just went underground. But all the tutoring companies instantly went bankrupt overnight. They just lost all their money. And it caused a bit of a panic because it's like, oh, the government can just shut down a sector of the economy that we have invested in. That's spooky. And there was a big sell-off at the time. I remember because I lost money on Alibaba and I was looking into it. A lot of things were down. Interesting fact while we're on China about the Gaokao. Recently, during this year's Gaokao exam, they shut down all of the Chinese ChatGPT equivalents like DeepSeek. They forced them to shut down during the exam so that nobody could possibly cheat with AI. Like the websites were shut. Nobody could go to them for this whole 48-hour period during the exam, which is pretty wild.
By the government overreach. So this means that for most investors, or at least investors without an inside edge, the stock market is simply too...
DeepSeek is hostable? Yeah, I'm sure some smart Chinese kid just put that shit on a fucking private server and linked it to their phone or something. I'm sure, but most people that are ChatGPTing everything probably haven't done that. You know what I'm saying? They just assumed the website would be up. Also, no one was prepared for it to get shut down.
Risky for the estimated returns. This also starves independent businesses of the funding that they may need to pursue genuine innovation. Outwardly, China has been making some very impressive strides in new technologies, but these tend to be concentrated into fields that the government has highlighted as a priority. Beyond that, there is also
Hostable on what? Isn't it crazy resource intensive? No, you could run the DeepSeek model on like a MacBook. There's different versions of it. I don't know, like the 8 gig model or whatever. You could run that on a Mac. Like depending on what kind of GPU you have, you need. You can host a different size of the model, but you can run the lower end ones easy.
also the not-so-secret fact that a lot of Chinese innovation is really just taking designs from manufacturing partners and relabeling it. It remains unclear how robust tech development will be beyond this. Now, we actually made an entire video on this a few years ago comparing Shenzhen and Silicon Valley. We don't want to repeat too much here, but again, the important point is that genuine investment into promising new technologies and business.
Why is NVIDIA so stingy with VRAM? I mean, they didn't ask me how much VRAM they should have. My understanding is, from like a non-technical area, is that adding more VRAM drastically increases the cost, and most consumers don't care. That's my understanding. Is that they do enough for most consumers' needs, but then when they add more, the cost of it goes way up, and most people don't use it. People care now. Listen, I understand people complain about it, but my understanding, I'm just telling you the insider information on it, is that in terms of buying habits, it's like enthusiasts that care. I think it's like not the regular consumer for things like these GPUs. That's my understanding. They didn't fucking ask me about it.
Is far more limited in China. Now this is actually a problem because households in China also don't really spend much money. About 68% of the USA's GDP is accounted for with household consumption. Now Americans are extremely adept at being amazing consumers, so for comparison the global average is 56%. In China, household consumption only makes up 39% of GDP. Of course, the country is much poorer overall than the USA, so they have less money to spend, but normally economists would actually expect the opposite. Poorer countries should naturally spend more of their total output on consumption because people need to spend more of their income just to maintain the essentials, and largely that is what happens. But again, China is different.
Built different.
Now, to be fair, today it's a middle-income country, but even back in the early 2000s, its people were spending barely anything of barely anything. So the country's been bringing in a lot of money through massive exports.
It's interesting. It's interesting referring to China as a middle-income country. I think China's like it's like they're very divided. Like the Chinese tier 1 cities, I don't know what to call them, like the big hub cities are like very high GDP per capita or income per capita, much higher. But like the rural China is extremely poor. So it's just this weird gap. But it's less like they're all in the middle, you know, it's like a divide. The coast. The coast is very hiring. It's almost like 2 countries. And they have 1 billion people, so it is almost like 2 countries. Legitimately, if you look at like the what do you call it? The demographic data, I guess.
It hasn't been spending it, and the stock market has been more or less ignored by most regular investors. So then, where is...
They have coastal elites. Yeah, I guess it would be similar to America in that respect. Yeah, like American Appalachia. It's more of the amount of people. It's just the amount. It's just so many people in either one.
All of this money going? Well, of course, there is at least one...
Like, for example, there's like, you know, something like 200 million migrant workers. It's almost like the population of the United States in migrant workers in China. The scale of numbers of people is just so big there.
Asset class that has up until recently been extremely popular, and that is real estate. And real estate is connected to the debt problem in a number of ways. Chinese real estate is the single largest asset class in the world. The country has taken its wealth from being the workshop of the world and invested it straight into real estate speculation. This has caused a lot of problems. We generally consider housing unaffordable in a city if the average home costs more than 5 times the average income. In Los Angeles, for example, it's about 7.5 times. Sydney is 13 times, and in London, the average home costs 19 times the average income. But
Damn, I did not know London was worse than Sydney. UK, what the fuck? 19 times average income in London for the fucking shitty fish and chips they have there? That's so cooked. And that's the only city that's growing economically in the UK. So every young person in Britain has to move to London for opportunity, and they have to pay 19 times their income for fucking housing? That's horrendous. That's horrendous, dude.
in Beijing, that number is closer to 35 times. Their cities are now just as expensive as major global centres.
That's what I was saying, yeah.
But average incomes are still much further behind. With an impressive savings rate and nowhere else to put their money, real estate has gone further than transitioning from a home to an asset class. It's now really the only asset class. With that, the country has also slowly built up a lot of household debt as well, mostly going to fund increasingly out-of-reach property purchases. Now, a real estate crisis by itself is one thing, and the potential for this literal house of cards to come tumbling down is very real in China, but this also caused another curious problem: deflation. Prices for houses have gone up, but as people have been desperately saving everything they make to afford these homes, prices for general consumer goods in China have been more or less flat for the last 25 years. The country is really good at making stuff, but really bad at buying it, so supply outstrips demand, and this is the logical outcome.
That's
now,
not
that
bad
might
for a
sound like
regular.
good problem to have,
Yeah.
but it's not. Stagnant prices stagnate an economy because it removes the motivation to both spend or invest. One of the big reasons why people doing something like saving for retirement invest into productive businesses is because they hope that the returns that business generates will outpace inflation, preserving their buying power long term. Without that inflationary stick at their back, there is less motivation to invest into productive businesses, and without consumers, there's less motivation for those businesses to exist at all. For now, that's been okay, because just like the world outsourced jobs to China, China outsourced consumption to the world. But heightened trade tensions and emerging competitors could...
So I want to jump in here. There's some truth to this, but I think it's a little more complicated. First thing I'll say is that this is my latest understanding, because I've had the same question. It seems... There's a guy, Michael Pettis, writes about this a lot. It's very true that U.S. overconsumes and China saves, I guess you could say. Ideally, Chinese consumers would consume more of what China produces. So there's not this massive, massive trade deficit. I would say that's true. However, and Chinese consumption is growing, though at a pretty slow rate, I'll be honest with you. It's taken, 20 years for Japan to get their consumption up, even 10%, and China's going slower than that. So there's truth to that. But people act like this trade tariff stuff is going to be like, oh, well, now they can't export. And my reality, I think, is that if they are making goods that people want at below cost, they will find their way into other countries buying them, no matter what. Like, people will consume them. I don't care what tariffs you throw up. I don't care what... it'll go through a different route. It'll go through a different country. They'll transship it. But somebody will buy them. So, is it fucking Aiden Calvin in my chat? User Calvin Aiden. What's he saying? I think tariffs are good, USA baby. Save it for the pod, dude. We're always fucking pro-tariff shill. Hey, did you guys know, if you guys didn't watch on the podcast, let me tell you two things Aiden said. First thing he said, I'm a millionaire. He opens every podcast now by talking about how he's a millionaire. It's cringe. He doesn't seem to understand that it makes him out of touch with regular people like you and me. He opens by talking about he's a millionaire. Second thing he does, and this really threw me off. He says he personally wants to get rid of birthright citizenship for all Americans. And if you were born here but aren't, and he said this, he did air quotes, but not from here, then you should get the hell out. That was what he said. 2 things from the podcast. I swear to God, you got to follow up on this stuff. Ideally, leave him a note. Leave him a comment about it. That's super specific, so it must be true. I know. Dude, I know. And he's like freaking out in the chat. I said it on Patreon once. Wait. Say what? Say what on Patreon once? The birthright stuff? That's crazy. That's wild, bro. I'm not appreciate that. You're not even subbed. Aiden. What the hell? Let us watch this China video. By the way, if you get us, I think we're like 1,200 Patrons away or something. If you want to check out Aiden's deep heart-to-heart discussion about his how he got to where he is, it's on the Patreon because we need about 1,000, 1,200 more or whatever, and we can go to China. And we're going to do a tour of China where we interview people and learn about the country's economy, boots on the ground.
Seriously jeopardize this lifeline. China knows this, which is why they've been trying to stimulate domestic consumption for a long time now, and one of the ways they've been doing that is by taking on a lot of debt to pump a lot of money into their economy. But again, where is this money coming from? International investors are not nearly as interested in buying Chinese government bonds as they are in US government bonds, and that's because even despite the risk of China's money markets, they are again paying far less than the comparatively risk-free US bonds.
True.
The actual answer to where this money is coming from is it's been made up. We all like the money printer memes, but between 2000 and the end of 2019, the M2 money supply in the USA roughly tripled. Of course, things got a little bit spicy after COVID, and economists slightly redefined this metric, hence the big spike. But even still, in China by comparison, the money supply sextupled, which probably doesn't mean anything to most of you watching, but it means that it multiplied 16 times over. I just thought the word sounded fun to say.
That is wild.
Anyway, that means the money supply in China has grown 4 times faster than the money supply in the USA. That's because when China wants to borrow, it just gets one of its state-owned banks to bippy-boppity boop some cash into existence and loan it to whatever level of government or state-owned enterprise needs it. Now again, the USA and most other advanced economies do this as well, but not to the same extent. It's the most logical question in all of economics. Why can't governments just print more money to pay for everything? Of course, the usual answer to this would be that it would cause rampant inflation. Normally, creating that much money that quickly would cause prices to rise
where do you get the
because there's
inflation?
more money chasing for your goods. But that hasn't happened in China, at least not yet. The country has been able to get away with such an extreme level of money creation because consumer prices have stayed very low, despite all.
This is actually the Japan story 1-to-1. Japan had the same thing. They thought they could get away with it from a long time because they had low consumer prices. They had deflation in consumer prices, but inflation in everything else.
Extra money floating around because Chinese consumers are still incredibly frugal. This low level of inflation also means that banks are happy to lend at the lower rates in the country because even smaller returns would end up being the same after taking inflation into account. So, is this a problem? By debt to GDP numbers, even by optimistic estimates, the country is already beyond what would be considered crisis point. The line is blurry, but generally it's extremely hard to come back from a debt to GDP ratio above 120% without exceptional sacrifices. Some economists argue that this line is more like 150% in today's global economy. Wherever the line is, China is so far beyond it that specifics don't really matter anymore. The line is a dot to them. 300% of GDP is borderline unheard of outside of failed states, so not great. But is it time for the fire thumbnails predicting that China will collapse in 69 seconds?
Oh!
Well, maybe, but there are some things working in China's favour as well.
Export growth.
Normally when we consider debt on a personal level, we consider 2 ratios. Debt to income, which is roughly analogous to debt to GDP, and also debt versus assets. Someone with $1 million in debt and a very low income might look like they are in trouble, but if they have $5 million in assets, they're probably going to be just fine. Now, the reason that we normally don't consider this when looking at governments is that over the last several decades, they generally don't hold that many assets, especially when compared to households. The federal government of the USA, for example, obviously has some assets, a vast array of military and civilian equipment.
Weren't we talking about selling some federal land? Revaluing the gold in Fort Knox?
Government buildings, some state-owned infrastructure, gold in Fort Knox, and a lot of federal land, but all of this is still relatively incidental compared to its debt. The Bureau of Fiscal Services estimates that these assets are collectively worth about $5.6 trillion. So yeah, not nothing, but not really enough to put a meaningful dent in the $30 trillion worth of debt and $15 trillion worth of unfunded commitments, which means the US government has a net worth of around negative $40 trillion.
Based.
The other thing is that a lot of these assets are not exactly liquid. There has actually been growing talk about selling off federal land holdings in western states to help pay down some debt. But releasing that much real estate onto the market could significantly destabilize the local economy, and ultimately, it would take decades without accepting fire sale prices. Beyond that, clearly the USA has a lot less
I read
interest
the
in
same
selling
articles,
something
I
like
guess.
an aircraft carrier or a B-2 bomber as a completely random example, and not something I had to include for the algorithm. Anyway, that's why wealth isn't really a consideration for countries like the USA and most advanced nations for that matter. But China is different. The government officially owns all of the land in China and rents it out on decades-long leases. But even accounting for the land that has already been committed to rentals, it's still worth a lot, especially around commercial centres. What's more is that all of these state-owned enterprises are worth something, and they are highly liquid. A lot of them already have a small number of their shares listed on stock exchanges, so the government already has a tool to sell off these if it ever felt it needed to. The other, more immediate consideration is that the vast majority of utilities are also owned by the government, which means that they don't represent an ongoing expense on top of the debt. In China, the government has a positive net worth of about $40 trillion according to estimates from the Chinese
exact
Academy of Social
opposite?
Sciences. Now again, as a reminder, putting an accurate value on all of these assets is difficult at the best of times, and government agencies have some motivation to produce some numbers that are a little bit funky. The only other numbers that we have to go off are from the Bank of International Settlements, which estimated a net worth of approximately $20 trillion, but that was from 2014, and obviously a lot could have changed since then.
Why don't we all put our money together and buy a single train in China, and we run it as a team, and we make some real money off that? That way we help Xi Jinping with his debt, and we make the A train. We run a train on China.
Either way, and regardless of the
The
exact
Atrioc
number,
Express,
it's
yeah.
clear that while China's debt to GDP looks catastrophically bad, its net worth is far healthier than most of its rivals. It also means that its debt is a lot easier to take back. In the USA, any increase in government debt is almost perfectly correlated with increases in household wealth, because by one means or another, lower taxes and more government spending make their way to individuals. The economist Richard Vague did a talk about this a year ago that's available for free here on YouTube, and it's definitely worth watching if you're interested, so we'll leave a link to that below. Of course, it's not all households that benefit from stimulus equally, but that's a whole separate discussion. The point is, taking this back would necessitate an equal and opposite reduction in household wealth, which would not only be politically unpopular, would also be economically destabilising and probably result in reduced tax revenues. In China, that wouldn't need to be extracted from households because most of this debt goes to build up government assets, so they can untie themselves from this debt with fewer restrictions, in theory at least. Another thing to consider is those low interest rates. A big debt at a low rate can have the same repayments as a smaller debt at a higher rate, putting the same net strain on government budgets, and as we've explored earlier, by luck or by design, the Chinese government is able to borrow at very, very low rates. But this is where breaking up that debt over so many different government entities actually hurts them. Sure, the central government can borrow at low rates, but provincial governments pay significantly more as they are riskier and don't have the same direct control over state banks. And then beyond that, state-owned enterprises often pay rates as high as 10%.
That is high.
The country has an immense amount of debt, all hidden away amongst various different levels of government, used to fund various government and semi-government organizations.
What I wonder,
that may
though,
or may
is-
not be developing.
What I wonder, though, is, so if America defaults on its debt, which it wouldn't do, but if it did, if it does default on its debt, the reason you don't want to do that is because people will stop loaning you money. And you're still going to need to run deficits. And then, so the borrowing cost you'll pay is astronomically higher. You'll be like Argentina. You have to pay like 18, 20, 25% just to get anyone to loan you money because you're so risky because you've defaulted. But what if China hides all its debt on smaller state-owned enterprises and then they default? Well, who cares? Like, what if they manage to psychologically separate it from China, then their government can still borrow, but the state-owned enterprises just fail. But that's fine because they already built the thing they needed to build, like the airport or the... I wonder, I'm sure there's a deeper answer here, but I'm just wondering if that psychological separation is advantageous, where you can just borrow from the world or from yourself, build the thing you want to build, and then
Genuine long-term prosperity for the country. So far, they've been able to get away with it because rates are low and money has...
I mean, I'm not even thinking about the actual problems of all those state enterprises failing, which is that they employ tens of millions of Chinese. And it would cause employment chaos countrywide, and that would be problems alone. But
has been easy to create because inflation has remained stubbornly stagnant, but that's come with its own problems, and it's also a narrow view of things. Inflation may be low, but only in the way that we typically measure it, which is the consumer price index, or basically a basket of household goods roughly indicative of average household spending. Yeah, sure, those items have had incredibly stable pricing because the country basically makes everything, and the average consumer is still very frugal. But inflation is basically like holding a balloon in your hand. Fill it up with enough money and it's going to bulge out somewhere. Sometimes this is consumer prices or stock market prices, but in the case of China, it's clearly been real estate prices.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, this is not a particularly productive asset class. If the housing bubble continues to wobble or general inflation takes hold, China could be in a lot of trouble. A debt burden that large, even if it is owned by internal state-controlled banks, is always going to be unwieldy. But there is probably a bigger takeaway in all of this, and that is that the Chinese economy is incredibly weird. We've been comparing figures to the USA as the most logical peer, but in reality, it just functions completely differently. The USA has a private sector that's underregulated with too much capital being thrown around. China is overregulated with the government really pushing out most natural development. The USA overconsumes, China underconsumes. The USA has had problems with stubborn inflation, China deflation. And yeah, when it comes to debt, the situation isn't as adversarial as it would look on the surface. China may buy a lot of US debt, but it has a lot of its own that it's buying from itself. A real falling out between these two economies wouldn't have a winner and a loser, it would just have losers. It is easy to look at current global events and conclude that this is China's time to shine because the USA is making so many missteps. But that's also unfair. China has just as many, if not more problems than the USA. They're just a lot better at keeping it to themselves. Now, one of the root causes of this weirdness is of course the government itself, or rather the...
I generally agree with that ending statement. I think they both have deep economic problems. I agree with that. Doug raid? No. Doug raid of 2, I appreciate that. Thank you for that 2 people raid, Doug. Wait, FlyQuest 1? Two? Oh shit! Wait, I gotta see this. I gotta see this. Oh, it's gonna. Well, I can't watch it. They threw Game 3, Giga stopped Game 4. North America, baby! I have some questions about something you mentioned in the past couple months. If Trump manages to get interest rates down to 0% without prolonging the time until recession, do you predict will happen this year? And we'll have a period of low interest rates, making the recession worse. Interest rates down would cause inflation to go up. Is the reason they're not culling it down now. So if Trump replaces Jerome Powell, throws someone in, cuts rates to 0 like 2021, the idea is that inflation would roar back. That's the idea. Okay, panicking. One thing I've noticed about over here in Europe is most retirement investing is done in the ETFs and so on with like 67% USA. Yeah, it's the world, dude. The world's retirement fund is in the S&P 500. And that S&P 500 is all in the top 8 stocks. It really is all in fucking NVIDIA to Broadcom. It's not just American 401ks. Everybody, all over the world. They just put their money into, because they've been doing well. Everyone just wants to put things that are doing well. I don't know what happens if they underperform. I really don't. Chat, I might end, actually. It's 8:43. I've been live for 6 hours. I might end, because I kind of want to watch this last game. I want to watch North America. I had a really fun day with you today. I'll go live tomorrow. I just don't think I have the energy in me for Smallville and to do a real react. And I want to go watch this fucking game, and I can't watch it on stream. I think it'll be fun. Guys, thank you for watching. I appreciate you. 077s, appreciate it. I'm gonna raid Cage Roll, dude. Go watch Cage Roll. We'll send Cage Roll a little this'll make a difference, dude. He's got 132,000 people. We're gonna make a difference there. We're gonna and then if you want to go watch Evan Gal, that'd be great too. Thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate it. That was a very fun day. I really enjoyed playing with Hera, and I enjoyed those videos. It was interesting. All right, bye.